The only reason it would make sense to stay in Canada, USA for the long term is if you're at the ultra rich. If you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars and you just don't care because if you pay 50% taxes, you don't care. Okay, I only made 200 million this year or whatever. Then I guess fine. Go ahead.
So if I'm getting this right, North America, no good.
Correct.
Europe, most European countries, no good.
Correct. Yeah, for various reasons.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I've always, I've been earning location independent income for a long time now, well over 10 years. So
Yeah.
the question, why are you still here, really comes up a lot in dinner conversations.
That's what I ask people who my buddies in Canada. You're in Canada, right? Yes.
Yeah.
I have buddies in Canada. I ask them in United States, in UK, Australia. I ask them all the same questions, right?
And for me, the reason I'm still here, and I actually moved from Israel, a Middle Eastern country, not too far from where you live, by the way, but they have all the downsides of Western countries, high tax. I used to pay 35% corporate tax and 20 more on dividends. In Israel, yeah, it was.
Israel is a de facto Western country in terms of infrastructure, tax regulation. Correct. Yes,
it is. Yeah, absolutely, man. So then I moved out to Canada because it was safer. Because Israel is always at war. There's always, terrorist attacks. I mean, not as bad as I'd say as mass shootings in the U.S., but I mean, it's pretty frequent. So you never know. Like you can be in a restaurant, and all of a sudden people get shot. Like it actually happens, or people get stabbed, or whatever. Like one time I was actually involved in one where a suicide bomber exploded himself on a security guard. And it was like a walking distance, like maybe 1 minute away from.
Were you outside? Where were you?
I was in a bus that was just getting into a central bus station. And there's a part to the right of where we're coming in. It's like a tiny little strip mall, but like it's really, really narrow. So you sort of pass through it to get to the city buses on the other side. So on that side, the suicide bomber exploded. Now, what's really interesting, I was supposed to go to the other side. So as soon as I would get off the bus, I would walk to that side. And de facto, where he exploded was about, I don't know, maybe 17 meters away from where I was supposed to be standing at a bus stop, waiting for my city bus to go catch the bus to where I was going. So I really got lucky. I mean, if we hit a few green lights on the way to the central station, I could have been standing there. So that was bad, but that's the reality of life in Israel. Ask anyone, they just accepted that this is the reality and just live their life normal. But I didn't like the idea, so we moved out to Canada, much safer. That's the first thing we noticed. Like in Israel, as soon as you land, you can cut the tension with a knife. Everybody's yelling and people are angry, and you really have to be like on alert. I don't know. I remember John Carlton, I think, said something about Marines living on, like they have 3 or 4 colors, red color, yellow color, green color, where it's like relaxed and on alert, etc. So, we were like always DEFCON 5, it was, so Canada's safer, but then I started seeing very much similar issues with taxes and regulations and this and that. The only thing that's better in Canada for us than Israel is the banking system, the ability to get merchant processing for what we do. That's still better than what we used to have in Israel, but it's a lot more expensive. And for now that I have my passport, took us 5 years. We got the passport, so we're citizens now. I am considering a move, but I've never really truly considered the countries you named, because my concern is having 2 kids is the infrastructure and facilities for the children, community. So I have no knowledge of how that looks like. I actually need to probably go and live there for 6 months as an experiment. But that's really been my biggest concern. If I have kids, is it really for me to go out and move there?
You have 2 kids, right?
Yeah, 10 and 4.
Yeah. So the general advice is that first you go to a new country you've never been to for a week, or 2 if you can do it. You don't have to bring your kids. and just see if you like the vibe, because you'll know in a week if you would live there or not. Many years ago, I was considering moving to Argentina, Buenos Aires. This is long before I'd ever been there, so I should check it out. And I went to Buenos Aires for a week, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed visiting. I mean, I said, I could never live here. No way. It's too chaotic. That's actually when I found Paraguay on the way back. I'm like, oh, and I fell in love with Paraguay. I was expecting to like Paraguay. So then if you like it, then yes, if you can do it, if your wife is down for it, you go there. You're right. You go there for a few months with your kids and see how that works. Plus, if you have kids, you're right. You want infrastructure. So like you and I have talked about Panama. Panama City is like the Latin version of Hong Kong. It's crazy. It's great. Right. Panama City is my favorite city in the world. And it's got all that stuff. Dubai too. Dubai's expensive. But then, yeah, you have to keep up the higher echelons. Like I said, if you have kids, it raises the bar in terms of complexity a little bit. I have kids too, but they're grown. And I actually waited. But I did this. It actually made sense to do this years ago when America was a lot less bad than it is now. I waited to move out of the country till my kids were older. But today, if I had little kids, I wouldn't wait. I mean, to your point, for Israel, for violence, I think this was 2 or 3 years ago. So I left the United States in 2021. I think this was maybe a year before I left. I don't remember when this was. It wasn't during the lockdowns of the pandemic, but it was around there. My mom was going to take my daughter to the mall to go shopping. And that day at the mall, there was a mass shooting. A guy with a gun shot 4 or 5 people at the very same mall they were going to go to within 3 hours of when they would have arrived. If they had gone 3 hours earlier, 3 hours later, they would have been in a mass shooting. This is the United States. And it's Clackamas Town Center. You can Google this, Clackamas Town Center mass shooting. I'm like, God. So your thing about everyone being on edge in Israel, Canada's a little better than this, the United States. But the United States, where I'm from, that's how people are now, especially on the West and East Coasts. In the Midwest, where the towns are smaller, it's not quite the case. But Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, New York, Atlanta, even in places like Miami, people are on edge. People are pissed off. There is now regular civil unrest in American cities. I've told Americans, if you want to, and I'm an American, but I don't consider myself an American anymore. But if you want to stay in America for the rest of your life, you just have to, what you just said, you have to just get accustomed to increasing violence and increasing civil unrest in the cities. Now, if you want to move out in the rural area, in the middle of nowhere, that might work, provided other factors. But if you're going to live anywhere near the United States, and then you go to places like the place I talked to, Armenia, Dubai, South America, you don't have that problem. A, you don't have violence if you pick the country correctly. B, people aren't mad all the time. So in Dubai, people aren't mad. People are smiling, having a great time. Here in Paraguay, they're smiling, they're happy, they're laughing. It's great. It's such a different environment from the United States and Canada and the UK. A lot of Western Europe is just as bad too. On top of the fact that taxes, these are the highest tax, the Western world is the highest tax region in the world, in the history of the world. I mean, around 40% minimum, if you look at taxes you pay and taxes you don't pay. Taxes, and then cost of living on top of that. You stack all these things. Yeah, the question becomes, why are you there? This is just my opinion. The only reason it would make sense to stay in Canada, USA for the long term is if you're at the ultra rich. If you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if you're like at the Alex Hormozy level and you just don't care because if you pay 50% taxes, you don't care. Okay, I only made $200 million this year or whatever. Then I guess fine, go ahead. But if you're not at that level, why? That's what my deal was. Why am I here? Why am I paying these taxes? Why am I dealing with all those angry people? Why am I seeing? I lived in Portland, Oregon, which is now one of the worst cities in the United States. There's still civil unrest. It's just regular there. Plus the homeless problem on the entire East Coast of the Western United States. In Portland, Oregon, just 20 years ago, was always the 1, 2, or 3rd top livable cities in the United States, and in some cases the world. And now it's one of the worst. And that's what most cities are happening. It used to be just Detroit. People talk about, oh, Detroit was so great. Now it's just now this horrible shithole. That's becoming most American cities. United States is collapsing. It's slowly collapsing, but it's collapsing. I would rather live somewhere that was either stable or rising. So Dubai is rising because everyone's moving there. Paraguay is rising. Paraguay is at the very low end of the economic scale. But every time I come to Paraguay, when I take that ride from the airport to my hotel or my Airbnb or whatever, I'm probably get an apartment in July. You have less trash. The streets improve. Nicer buildings are going up. It's improving every time you come. Every time I visit the United States, it's noticeably worse. There's more trash on the streets. There's more homeless in the streets. People are more pissed off. The roads are just terrible. Like the roads in Los Angeles. I haven't been to Los Angeles lately. They're like a third world country. It's like Paraguay in Los Angeles, but you're paying half your income in tax for third world infrastructure. What's the point? I don't get it. Unless you have, again, I've talked about this, unless you have small kids. So you're in that one area where small kids, I have small children, that's a valid excuse. That's something you have to think through, especially guys who are divorced and they have small kids with baby mama and baby mama doesn't want to leave. Those guys are kind of stuck. But everyone else, either if you don't have kids or in my case, you have grown kids, I don't see the point anymore. I don't get it when it's so easy these days. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's I was in London a few weeks back, and I asked my daughter like if she liked it. She said she liked it very much. Then I asked her, would she like to move there because the vibe is great, and I mean it really ticks lots of boxes for me. But of course, it's same high taxes and everything else. But at least I like it there, you know.
Yeah.
So she says, no, I don't want to move there. I say, why? She says, I don't want to lose my progress here. Basically, you know, she's 10 and she feels like all of her friends are here and the community is here, which I completely understand, because when my parents made the decision to move from Ukraine to Israel, I think I was 10, and we managed to get the whole process done in about 2 years. So 2 months before I turned 12, we moved. And my biggest fear was that I'm not going to make any new friends in this new place. And I had to go and learn a whole new language. And I mean, it's like a right to left sort of language. I mean, you live in Dubai, so you've seen the Arabic language.
Yes.
So it's they're very similar, by the way. So it was terrifying to me. But seeing what's going on in Ukraine right now, I look back and I was like, man, that was a good decision. They made a really good decision to move.
Right. And these countries, I mean, Zimbabwe and Venezuela, we could list all these countries that were pretty good until one day something happened. And so, for example, during the pandemic, so I've been preaching location independent income and all that stuff to my audience for 15 years. And a lot of them don't have, a lot of them have corporate jobs, and they're trying to make that transition. In our world, location independent income is the norm. Or for a lot of normal human beings, it's not. Unfortunately, post-pandemic is a little better. But anyway, during the pandemic, I had guys who were stuck in Italy. Italy was really bad. Lockdowns, and it was horrible. And I had guys in Italy saying, oh my God, I'm stuck. You've been screaming at us to create our own location-dependent income and have an international backup plan for years and years. I've seen your YouTube videos, your emails, your blog posts, blah, blah, blah. I didn't take any action on it. And now you're right. I'm screwed. This sucks. I hate being here. I wish I could leave, and I can't. And so that's why international backup plan these days, where the entire Western civilization is on its way down, it doesn't make sense to not at least have a backup plan. And the model you follow ideally is where can you be in 72 hours? So that's one of the things I have, is that where can I be so I could be here in Paraguay within 48 hours from Dubai. I could be in the United States if I really wanted to, or I could be in Mexico within 24 hours. I could be Armenia within, I think, 12 hours. From Dubai. If something horrible happened in Dubai, and again, I'm not planning anything horrible happening, that's why I picked that country. But if something happened, I could be, where could you be in 72 hours? That means your feet are on the ground not you're leaving in 72 hours. Your feet are on the ground in 72 hours. Where can you be? If the answer is, well, you should pick an option and at least have the option, which is not that difficult. Moving out of the country is one thing, but setting the international plan B is not that bad.
Yeah, you're right.